The General War, the titanic conflict between the Alliance, led by the dishonorable and cowardly United Federation of Planets, and the Coalition, led of course by the mighty and honorable Klingon Empire, was entering its second decade when we determined to break the stalemate in the truest tradition of all good Klingons, by wielding the biggest and sharpest blade. This was to become the B10 class, of 4 ships, each more than twice the size of the D7 or Katinga class battlecruiser, and a third bigger than the C8 Dreadnought series. The Federation's Starfleet termed these massive ships battleships, the Patah somehow forgetting that 400 years earlier, Dreadnoughts were battleships. The B-10s were worthy vessels, massing 500,000 tons, far exceeding the more numerous heavy cruisers and battle cruisers, which are mere lightweights at 200,000 tons. I use human measurements so that your inferior and weak minds may more easily understand our glory. For production efficiency, the C8 Dreadnoughts had simply used 3 of the 45-gigawatt engines that were used in pairs on the D7 and Katinga. The B-10s mounted 4 of these engines, to each of which we also mounted a pair of disruptors, of course. The 180,000 gigawatt warp core was supplemented by 33,000 gigawatts of power from the sublight impulse drives, and 18,000 gigawatts provided by the fusion reactors. Batteries could, for a short while, provide another 36,000 gigawatts, or store power for later use in battle. The crew numbered 810, including a marine complement of 160 troops, although of course any Klingon in the fleet is a mighty warrior. It is only that some of us have other jobs to do aboard a starship. While the D7 mounted 4 disruptors as its heavy armament, the B-10 had 8 similar weapons facing forward, and 2 facing the rear. The rear-firing disruptors were to deal with any dishonorable enemy that refused to meet us in head-on combat and hid behind the ship like a sniveling Romulan. These heavy energy weapons had a maximum range of 400,000 kilometers. Although they did fairly little damage at that extreme range, obviously the ship was designed to close gloriously to 80,000 kilometers, or less, from the enemy, at which point we can overload the weapons to double the normal energy charge and produce a truly massive amount of damage. Each disruptor blast produced about half as much damage as the Federation's photon torpedo, but fired twice as often. At 10,000 kilometers, the 8 forward-firing disruptors, double-loaded with energy, could reduce a Federation battlecruiser such as the USS Constellation to a formation of scrap metal worth the vessel's name in but a single volley. More numerous were the 15 phasers, which fired phased energy beams. We gave these weapons a greater purpose than could have been found with their original owners. Combined, these 15 weapons on their own could penetrate the shields of a Federation battlecruiser and leave it severely crippled. Combined with the disruptors, these energy weapons could reduce a Federation dreadnought to scrap metal in a single, massive volley at 20,000 kilometers. There were also 9 smaller short-range phasers, and 2 racks of a dozen drones that were intended to provide some protection from incoming missiles or anything else small, such as armed shuttlecraft, that happened to wander too close. The main weapons, of course, are not bothered with the stings of flies. But that was not all. Being Klingons, we fitted the B-10 with 8 racks of 6 nuclear-tipped self-guiding missiles apiece, with 100 more in the cargo holds for reloads. Less than a dozen of these missiles would reduce a Federation battlecruiser to scrap metal, assuming the target didn't unsportingly use its own offensive weapons to shoot down the incoming missiles, although this would leave it unarmed and facing the B-10's direct-fire weapons, so we will get the kill anyway. Unfortunately, construction of the ships proceeded at a glacial pace, as no empire had ever built anything that big, and no one understood what construction technologies would be needed to keep them in one piece at their maximum speed of warp 9.25. Other empires started construction on their own battleships, such as the Federation's Mars class, but of course they made even slower progress. Invincible was completed just at the end of the General War and fought against the subsequent invasion from the Andromeda Galaxy. Insatiable was modified during construction to carry 24 armed shuttles, and also fought the Andromedans. Inviolable was the only battleship to see combat in the General War. The 4 section was used in combat against the Alliance offensive, As we hadn't quite finished the aft section yet. Invulnerable, the fourth ship, also saw her forward section used in combat, this time against the Andromedans. Various plans were made to combine the forward section of Inviolable and Invulnerable with the rear hulls of some large cargo ships, or perhaps some smaller C-8 dreadnoughts, but none of these plans came to fruition. Instead, we built fast battleships, which we call the B9, which have the same power plant, but on a hull that only masses 420,000 tons and mounts about 80% of the B10's mighty weaponry. The two ships that were fully operational, Invincible and Insatiable, were a key element in defeating Andromedan invasion, allowing the empires of the Milky Way galaxy to get back to what they do well, but of course we do best. Fighting each other in glorious battle!
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.